Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Peterson. I head up the digital product design group here at Altair. Today, I'm happy to have with me Chema, Daniel, and Kevin to help share some of the usability improvements we've made for HyperWorks in 2022.3. So for me, I only have one feature in HyperWorks for 2022.3, and this is a performance improvement, basically the dynamic center of rotation. So I'll show just a very, very small demo, but what this is, show my cursor here. This is the time between middle mouse down and rotation start. So if you remember to rotate, to basically use the arc ball, it's middle mouse rotate, pan is right mouse. So for large models, the time between the event middle mouse down and the rotation start made that time between there was, so for like a very large model, 4 gigs, I was finding around 600 milliseconds on my machine. Versus the new approach, which is graphics based. Actually, I was trying to use video to measure it, and even at 60 frames per second, I couldn't get more than 1 frame between my middle mouse down and rotation start. So it's very, very fast. Surely you all have a model that is big enough to slow it down, but I will bet that dynamic center rotation is no longer the slowest thing. Other things will definitely be. So let me just move back up here. So performance is much better and very noticeable in large models. Basically, the rotation should be very easy and smooth, just shouldn't think about it. Another change that we just made that doesn't really have anything to do with dynamic center rotation, but we're no longer rotating with the hover highlight on. This just speeds everything up. And then determining, so this is also like way out in the weeds here, but determining the center for off-model rotation is closer to Inspire's behavior. I can show that real quick too. Okay, so here's a model. For sure, try it on some of the larger models that you have. This is really just the only model I'm comfortable sharing. But this is dynamic center, so it just means that every time I start an arc ball rotation, I'm picking up the center of rotation dynamically. To set a static center, it's the same as it's always been: Control, middle mouse click, and it just sticks there. To reset that, I can control middle mouse in space, or I can fit, and then we go back to dynamic. So just a little reminder there. If you start a rotation off the screen, we usually try to basically go model center as the rotation center. If you zoom in and you are away from your model, we try to, let's say, snap to the nearest part of your model, so kind of like this. And then one thing that we did that's a little closer to Inspire is if you start a rotation that is, way far away, so you wouldn't have picked up this part of the model, we use center screen to basically pick a point that's on the model. So just shoot a ray from the center of the screen through the model and try to pick up that point. So, okay, way too much information, but it is much, much faster, and the behavior is, I would say, pretty much identical. I don't think you would really notice any behavior changes between 2022.3, only performance improvements. So with that, I think I'll throw it over to Daniel.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Share the screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about drag and drop here. We had drag and drop previously in HM, but it was all hard-coded to specific extensions that so with drag and drop we had it previously, but it was hard coded. Now we've taken that away. We do some guessing based on your extension, but the user can change it to whatever file type that they choose. So with drag and drop, very simple. Just if you have a Windows Explorer or anything, you can just drag it into the graphics area. The new thing is that it will show a dialog here that will let you either load in a new model. This is what it always did previously. It was open, so it always open a new model. Now we added this merge option, which is your import. So you can now open or import models with drag or drop, and we support all the different file types. So we support BOM files, connectors, geometry, hypermesh solver, and result files. You can drag any of those of any extension in, and it will either open it or it will import that model. Next up is preferences. So we did some stuff behind the scenes here with preferences. There's now a common category. And what this is there was some overlap between mostly kind of appearance and graphical things between HyperMesh and HyperView. So we combine those together into one common area so that if you change it in the common area, then it would change on both applications, even if they haven't been launched yet. So if you change something like the triad in HM, then you launch HyperView, then it would also be changed. We also combined all the options into the one dialog. Not all of these will show up at the start. Whatever program you launch with, if it's HyperMesh or HyperView, you would see common and then HyperMesh. And then as you launch other tools like HyperView, MotionView, HyperGraph, they would add to this list, and then you can then change those options at any point, even if you're not in that program at the time. Next up is quick set creation. We had a lot of requests for this. Basically, if you're in idle mode, you can choose either some nodes or elements. You just select them on the screen. If you right click, you'll see a new option called Create Set in the context menu. If you select that, then you'll get a pop-up with the set, and all the elements or nodes that you selected will be automatically applied to this set. And it's just really quick to create sets for nodes or elements. These are the cards that we're supporting for OptiStruct Radios, Abacus, ADVC, LSDyna, and Permis. We also added set creation to organize. It's not quite as quick as idle, but it's still there. Same basic flow though. You select some either elements or nodes. For your destination, you would choose a set. And then if you don't have one selected, you can right click, choose create set, and then choose the set, and then you can apply it. And with both of these, we're also only adding valid entity types to the set. So certain sets, like in LSDyna, it's a shell element set. So if you selected solid elements, we exclude those from the set, and we won't add those to the set. So we added some intelligence there. For entity IDs, there's a couple things here. This is in the right-click menu under More. We have Show IDs and the new Copy IDs. Show IDs was here before, and it works the same as before. Basically, you select some entities on the screen. You can hit now. The new thing is Control Q is the new shortcut. It was Q previously, but we had some conflict with the Q in the browser. It's for review mode. So we changed this to Control Q. And basically you would select entities on the screen, you hit Control Q, it will show them. You can click other entities. It will now append. We did that, I think, in .2. It will append the IDs being displayed. And then if you have nothing selected, Control Q would be clear. So this is show or clear is Control Q. And the new option we added is for .3 is this copy IDs. This came in, it was a customer request that it basically just copies the IDs to the clipboard, but it copies them as a range. So it's not going to copy every single ID with commas. It's going to do kind of an intelligent range. So it saves in performance and space. And then you can paste this into Excel or whatever other program you would like. And finally, for me, geometry transparency. This is something that we could do previously in HyperMesh, HyperWorks, but it only applied to everything. We had a transparent mode, and it would make every component transparent. Now you can choose the components that you want to make transparent, and only those components would be transparent. And you have a level selector here. You can choose the level of transparency. So that's it for me. Pretty basic stuff. Next up is Kevin. Feel free to take over.
Thanks, Daniel. Hey guys, my name is Kevin D'Souza, and I'll be talking about the new find tool that we have in HyperWorks, followed by some of the updates that we did for the advanced selection framework in the previous release. So when you talk about the find tool, there are two aspects to it. The first part is the panel replacement for the two functions, that is the attached and the between function, which was available in the find panel. And the second aspect is the replacement, or rather the integration of another find function, which is the find nearby function, which was previously available in the context here, but it was a bit clunky to use. So what we have done is integrated this option as well into the find tool, thereby kind of making the user experience consistent and more easier to use. So with that being said, you can access the find tool from the view toolbar here. You can click on this icon and you'll be taken to this particular UI. The default mode is attached, and you can use the drop down here to change it to nearby or shared by. The design itself is kind of readable in the operation that you're executing. So in this case, I'm finding elements that are attached to my selected elements, or I can change the output type by using this drop down and change it to any of the other supported entity types. So because this is a display control tool, the behavior of this to stay consistent with the other display control tools, like for example, showhide, the execution of the operation is going to happen on selection. So just like you pick to show hide, you'll be able to, for example, in here, select elements to automatically execute the operation. So you can see that you already found the elements that are attached to the elements that I selected. So once that's done, you can find further entities, in this case, elements, by clicking on the Find Next button. So this is a way for you to further find further layers into your selected entities. So this is kind of an improvement from the panel where you had to save the user mark, then you can click on the selector, retrieve it, then you can hit find, so you can do it in one click. And if you want to do this operation recursively, you can click on the Find All button, and what this is going to do is it's going to find every element, in this case, that is attached to my selected elements. So you can save the found entities to user mark. So you can click on this button, and it's going to save the found entities to user mark, and you can retrieve this selection in a different place. So that's possible. The same is possible with, for example, other entities. So you can pick a surface, manually find adjacent layers, or say find all to find all surfaces which are attached to the selected surface. Few more examples probably. One would be it doesn't always have to be the same entity type. You can, for example, decide to find that you need to find the constraint extra nodes that are attached to your selected group of elements, and you can do this, and it's gonna change the display control of the constraint extra nodes in the model. You can work on constraints. So if your model has a bunch of constraints that you want to focus on, you can find, for example, elements that are attached to these constraints. Right? So I can undo this. I can also change this to the output to components, and say I want to find all the components that are attached to these constraints in one click. Right? If you are rather interested in just looking at the connectivity of the whole model with respect to constraints, we added a new option in here. It's available in the hamburger menu, which says include constraints. So what this does is it allows you to include these new constraint entities while checking for FE connectivity. So basically, it's enabled by default, but if I disable it and pick this component and say find all, it's not going to find all the components that are attached through constraints because that option is disabled. Instead, if I had this enabled, pick the same component and say find all, it's going to find all the components which are connected to each other through these constraint entities. So that option is available here. Okay. You can also, for example, find sets that are attached to a particular, let's say, a component. I can pick, and you can see that the set segment which are defined in these components are brought to view. The attach functions which are already implemented in the idle still stay, so you can still use the idle workflow to find attach. So you can pick all the segments and isolate. There was actually a bug in this particular scenario where if you had the base elements of this of these segments hidden, you could not find attach. So we fixed that. So now you can say pick the segments, hit E to get the attached elements, and then hit A to get the elements, hit J to get an adjacent layer of elements, and so on, so that you can modify the set. So the idle find attached and the find tool coexist in a way, so you can use both of these interchangeably. This is more of a dedicated tool to give more power to exactly what you want to find. Idle is the more simpler way. All the advanced options for any find operations, they are available in the hamburger menu here. So you can control the action. If you want to show the found entities or isolate, you can choose to show or display the IDs of the found entities. So if I, for example, make an element selection here, let's show IDs. So it's going to show the IDs of the found entities as well. So that's available. Okay. So if you are in Dyna, for example, Dyna radios, there is an additional option, which is just like I previously showed the option to include constraints while checking for FE connectivity. You can also choose to include type contexts for checking for FE connectivity. So that's available in Dyna and radios. This is not yet available for the other profiles because, but since this workflow is now available, if the interface code is updated to the respective interfaces, we should be able to easily enable this option for all the interfaces, so they look and feel consistent. So that's attached. Next up is nearby. So since attached is kind of a way for you to get stuff which is physically or connected in a way, the nearby option is more of, like we already know, is more of a spatial search. So you can define a radius that you want to now work with. You can change the entity types. In this case, I've chosen constraint external nodes, components, and connectors. And if I make this selection, it's going to show all the entities which are within this radius defined based on the output mark that I have requested. If I want to make a change, I can just undo this, change the radius to a larger value, and re-execute, and it should work easily as compared to the previous workflow. The action is under the hamburger menu here, so you can either decide to show or you can do an isolate. So if you want to focus, for example, on a particular section of your model, you can do an isolate as well. So this is gonna get the mark and isolate on it. So that's in here. We can, for example, also find components that are near to maybe connectors. So you can make a selection, and that should work as well, right? So the last function is the shared by. This is actually the equivalent to the between function, which was available in the panel. So that's available here. So it lets you pick entities, and what it's going to do is it's going to let me change that to show again. So what it's going to do is it's going to find entities which are between your selected entities. So in this case, it's finding nodes which are in between the selected components, right? So that's the find tool. Just one quick note that I want to make. Since this function, like I said, is going to execute on selection, if you want to work more like the classic way, in the sense you don't want the operation to execute directly on selection, you just need to switch off automatic mode through this lightning icon here. So what this does is the execution is no more going to be on selection. So you can continue to select and then say find nearby to execute. So this button is available when you switch off this job, the automatic mode. So just a quick note. Moving on the advanced selection side, we actually enabled a few of the modules which were previously available just on the browser side for the advanced selection dialog and a few other places as well. Those particular modules are the column attributes, attribute columns, the search completion, and the column filtering. So if you are in a particular selection method which refers to an entity view now, you can right click on here and go to the more attribute dialog and look for the attribute of your choice to populate. In this case, I already have it populated here. So I'm going to populate the Young's modulus and row data here. So once this is available, you can filter through your desired output. So let's say 1300, 2800, and row maybe greater than 2800, and row equals row equals 1 point, I guess this one here, and hit enter. So what it allows you to do is to filter through your allowable materials so that you can make your selection. So once these columns are populated in one place, it automatically reflects in all other places where this particular entity is referred. So you can go to element by material, for example, material, and the search, the column data along with the search history is already available for you to pick, and you can make a selection and isolate to make my selection, right? So these modules are available on all the features or all the places where you have access to advanced selection, be it the idle, the tools, or the E. So for example, if you are if you wanted to create a set of parts which are rigid, you can quickly go to material view and let's say search by card image material 20, Control Shift to select them all, and then say OK. So now you have your set of rigid parts. So this is just a quick example to show the number of use cases that you can use these features to efficiently make your selection. These features are not just available in the advanced selection dialog. It is you can also find them in other dialogs. For example, the current collector dialogs. If you go to current part, in this case, you can see that all the columns which are available in part browser, the PID, MID, revision, representation, they're all available within the same place. I can filter through the UID, for example, and hit enter and double click to select. So it's available on all of these entity specific current entity dialogs. So before I end, I just wanted to quickly highlight two other enhancements that we did. So one is a new action that we added. So previously in any dialog, be it advanced selection or the current collector dialog, so the standard way to select and accept would be you make a left click and middle mouse click to accept. So additionally to that, we also added the double click as unsupported action. So you can, if you know about the part that you want to set as the current part, you can just double click on it, and that's going to select and accept in one go. You can, for example, do it if you want to change the property of this particular component, double click. So double click is now supported, just FYI. So kind of a quick way for you to select an OK in one go. And the last part is now for all the list of entities which are available in the selection views, we have this new drop checkbox, which allows you to check or alter the display state of this list. This is basically done to allow us to, or provide us a way to control the list for some of these entities. For example, the geometry entities, especially when you had a large model with large number of surfaces, for example, loading the advanced selection dialog would take a lot of time. This is primarily because it was calculating the list of all these entities. So we decided to keep this disabled by default for the geometry entities, with the effect that the performance of the advanced selection invoke is now really good, even on large models. In the off case, which is not quite often, you have, because there's not a lot of meaningful data that you can access from here, names and IDs. But if you still want to access it, you can enable this list by demand. And for example, if you had an metadata that you wanted to access from here, you can still go to the more dialog and help with your selection. Okay, so I guess with that, I'll move it on to Chima, who'll be talking about the rest of the selection and manipulator framework enhancements that we have done in the past 2 releases. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Kevin. All right, I'll jump right to it. I'll cap off this presentation today with a few more selection enhancements and some manipulator updates, like Kevin said. So continuing with the selection stuff, we also introduced the selection modes for the window select. This was actually introduced in 22.2, so it's worth mentioning here. So I'll do a very quick demo of this, but now basically we have a menu button inside the right-click menu where you can choose if your window selection operates inside, select stuff inside, selects outside of it, and for some modes, the intersecting, which is something we had before as well. And then some of the manipulators have received some upgrades. So I'll talk about when you're translating and rotating via the move tool, new things we have there. When you're defining a direction or an orientation using the vector tool manipulator, or when you're defining a plane using the plane tool. We have some tweaks to that as well. So let me jump straight to it. I'll start with the selection. So like I mentioned, we have the right-click menu. You can change the shape of your window. And then we have now the control here. So for example, if I was performing a circle selection, as you know, if I draw a normal circle, it would select stuff that's inside. Now we have this toggle I can switch to outside. So that's something that was missing for a while in the new HyperMesh. So this will select stuff outside. Quick comment, this is available for appending and deselecting, so you can do interesting things. For example, if I wanted to select inside here, but only on this part, as you know, when I perform it, it's going to select everything underneath. So because I have a hole here, it's actually going through the depth and selecting the stuff that's inside. Of course, there's a few different ways you could do it. Just a quick reminder, we do have the Boolean modes in the advanced selection. So you could start by this and then go to advanced selection and then switch to, I don't know, intersect maybe with this compose. That could be one way of doing it. And then you get to that. But you can also do it via this outside by, for example, starting by selecting this whole thing, either by topology. Right now I did the alt click to do the alt selection, which selects by face or by component. Then I could switch to outside, and if you hold shift, let me make sure, yeah, I have outside. If you hold shift, you can do, basically I'm doing deselecting outside of here. So now I have this. So just a quick reminder that you can do deselect and append with it. And quick honorable mention to intersecting. This is available. This wasn't there before, but now it's part of this menu as well. This is only available for elements, lines, and surfaces, and only when you're using the freehand and polyline select. So when you do this, you can switch to the intersecting mode. This is something that is very useful for this type of shapes where maybe it's an awkward shape where it doesn't fit perfectly a circle or a rectangle, and if you don't want to draw a polyline around it because there's not that long, a lot of users still do like this sort of manual click. If you prefer to do the manual click of this, I've seen many users do this super quick turbo clicking. I'd like to offer this as an alternative for that. This is sort of like a paintbrush style. If you use intersecting, you can actually select some of these shapes pretty quickly without having to click 1,000 times quickly. You can just move your mouse around. And it supports also deselecting, like I said before. So if you started with a sort of blob like this, and then you switch to intersect, by holding shift and drawing it feels like you're cutting off, like you're shaving off elements like this. So you can also deselect stuff from it. So anyway, just a quick mention for that. That was available before, but that's now part of this menu, inside, outside, intersecting. Then to jump on the manipulators, I'll use a larger model. I'll start with the translating and rotating. So let me load a different view here. So this model is on the larger side, and this is a model where moving elements that are connected and moving it interactively can be pretty slow if you're using the move tool here in the ribbon. So let me select some elements, maybe on this component. And you'll notice that it's also not aligned to global. So I'll show some of the new alignment options here. So performance options, just to show you the relative, I'm going to attempt to move this interactively. You can see how it's very stuttery. So I have to wait a little bit for it to, to catch up. And one of the reasons I might want to do this interactively instead of just typing the components is to use snaps, etc. So this can get really slow if you have large models. There's two things happening here. There's the preview of the part that I am moving that gets calculated every so often, and there's also the connectivity of the elements. So now we've introduced a couple of performance options for these. This was available before, but it was named a little confusing, so we've named it a little bit better. Show mesh connectivity in real time. Turn that off, and then this is the new one, which we have the show preview option, which you can also turn off. If I turn off both, this basically gets as fast as you can get for doing this interactively. If I try to do this again, now you see we don't do any calculation. So you're basically just moving the manipulator, which should be really fast, even on very large models. And you can go ahead and snap if you need to. And then only when you release the mouse, then it actually performs the translation. So if you need to do interactive drags, you can turn those options off to increase performance. As you know, you can hold shift or double click to, let me start a new translation here, to reposition the manipulator. So that's something that, let me just do it here to sort of move along this line. A new thing we have introduced is this increment row. So when you select any degree of freedom, rotations or translations, you're going to get this expander where you get an increment field where you can type increments that you can apply in positive or negative direction. So you can do every click will apply an increment of 25 in positive or negative direction in this case. Once you type in something, if you keep it in this mode, it'll remember. So even if I click away and select again, or even if I deselect and select my elements again, it should remember. So you can go straight to apply the increment. It remembers that it was expanded, and it remembers the last increment that you typed. Another button you will notice here is this advanced alignment for the degrees of freedom. This is something that is very useful. Again, if you want to align from source to target, you can double click or hold shift to reposition this. What we've done here for advanced alignments, sometimes it's easier to use the vector tool. Let me actually move this a little bit away so that it becomes easier. So by selecting a degree of freedom, in this case, I'm going to choose any of the translation arrows and click on this button. It will let you use the advanced alignment using the vector tool. So I could choose the source here For example, I want to move from this corner to some corner over here. And once you define your vector in any way, you accept it, and it will basically perform the tool alignment with that vector. And it also measures and copies that distance here. So now if I apply this, it will actually perform exactly, it moved that corner to this corner. So this works for both translations and rotations. For example, if I wanted to rotate this whole thing, let me do a little bit of geometry work. If I wanted to rotate this along a pivot point based on this, since I have a couple minutes, I'll create. This is how I've done it in the past by creating a line here and a line here. And then I'll do a quick extension. This one. And this one. And now I'll go back to here and let's rotate this other part here. Select my elements. And again, in this particular model, the alignment is off, so it's really hard to just say X, Y, Z on this. So by selecting rotational degree of freedom, and I choose to align it, there's a few ways I can do that. For example, with a vector tool, as you know, we have the quick align mode if you hold the control key. So I can just hold control, pick 3 points in this face. That'll automatically align my vector normal to those 3 points. And then I can grab it and translate it here to this intersection, which is a snap that we have here. So I can position it here, hit play, and now my rotation is aligned to that. So I can go ahead and apply, some amount of rotation. And this should hopefully not. There we go. So now I rotate it. Yeah, so that is the alignment. Again, it's available for translating and rotating. So you can use the vector tool to do advanced alignments with any degree of freedom, and you can also measure and apply increments using this expander. This should be available anywhere that you see this manipulator across different tools. So it comes with the manipulator itself. Another tweak we did for another tool that we have, which is the, let me bring in a system that I think I have here. There we go. I'll jump to a tool that uses that invokes the vector tool, for example. This is the spin axis if I wanted to spin this line around a location. So here, again, I can try to choose a rotation axis here, but the model is not aligned, so it can be tricky. It can be tricky to quickly choose a rotation direction. If you use the advanced alignment for this axis, it uses the vector tool. This is a new button we've added where you can align the vector tool to a local system or a vector. So here, by clicking this, you're able to select the local system. And now the vector manipulator is, you see this change to lowercase. So now if I do X, Y, Z, it's actually snapped to the local system, which you can see by this check indicates that a system is selected. So now I would be able to choose Z in this case, for example, and now my my rotation axis is defined on this axis. You go back here. If you wanted to reset it, you can click again and just select a new system, or if you reset it, it basically goes back to global. So now X, Y, Z are the global X, Y, Z. If you wanted to snap to an existing vector entity, you can use the same button. So if I had a vector, I can also choose to align to a vector instead of a system. They're actually cumulative, so you can actually be on a local system and then align to a vector. So the vector is a one-time alignment. It doesn't really remember that it's aligned to a vector. It's just for quick alignment based on an existing vector entity. Yeah, so that is available here for any tool using vector tool. So again, split with plane or any other places where you see this, it should carry over. Finally, just a quick couple of additions we've done in the plane manipulator. So this is the plane manipulator. Some tools might decide to use this for defining a plane. We have now also the center coordinates here. So this was a request as well. Some people would like to, basically a common use case is just choosing global X, Y, Z. And then, if I want to align to Y and then I want to just align to Y 0, I can just type 0 here. These are the coordinates of the center. As you know, this is only if you're interested in typing the coordinates. As you know, if you want full control of the center, besides being able to translate and rotate, as we do with this manipulator, just a reminder, you can actually click this guide to have full control of the center via the vector tool, where you can do other things like align to plane, again using control clicks to quickly align. And because, again, this is a carryover of our vector manipulator, it also has the local system available. So in this case, you can also assign it to the local system and basically have here your local XYZ to define this plane based on the local system. So all that carries over. One little other detail we've done in this is the way that we've the way that these rotators work is just tweaked a little bit if you used them before. So before it used to snap directly to 45 or 90. Now it's actually additive. So if you keep clicking, it'll just either subtract or add 90 or 45. So just a quick some quick shortcuts there for that. All right, I think I'm gonna finish up with that. So I want to thank you for attending today, and let us know if you have any further questions.